everybody. Welcome back. Here is my surprise guest who I have rarely, who you've never met and you do not know. Somebody I love pulling in because I tell him nothing. He has no clue what I'm going to ask him today. But I had a thought the other day when I was interviewing Connor Hutchinson, one of our franchisees from North Carolina who owns 5 locations. And while I was talking to him, this came to me, and I thought, I have got to talk to Mike about this on a podcast. It would really help people. So I want to talk today about seeing the potential in people and putting them in places to succeed. And sometimes, statistically speaking, these people would never be successful, but we see something in them and they go on to dominate their craft against all odds. But there's something really special about you, and that is that you always in the right situation can seem to see the potential in people that they don't see in themselves. And first, I want you to tell me about somebody that believed in you, which was Anthony, the owner of Anytime Fitness, and the trust he had in you and in your character. And what do you think it was that he believed in you for?
So Anthony was the owner of Anytime Fitness in Blaine, the club I now own. He used to own that. He started it out. And he had to hire me before I was 18 to be a trainer. So technically I couldn't even get my license, but he allowed me to be a trainer. And so I guess he saw something there. And it was interesting because like even at that age, like, he told one of the clients I was training that eventually he'd probably work for me. And so
Wow.
yeah, it was he was out of the Navy. He had at the time owned 5 Anytime Fitnesses. Now he just owns 1 or 2. He sold off to me one of the locations and 2 of them to another of his general manager. So, anyways, he was probably one of the first people. That was my first quote unquote real job, and then I kind of bounced around to State Farm and other job stuff, doing credit card processing and other things like that before I landed with Augusta.
Well, I don't know what in him believed in you so much, but he offered you a really special deal on buying it that you would have never been able to have otherwise unless he believed in you. And I don't know if you want to share any of that or could share any of that, but what he did with you, I've never heard of anybody doing for somebody so young before.
Well, it was a few years later when I ended up purchasing it. So I'd started Augusta and then stopped working at the gym because I went full time. And then he basically put it up for sale. And within like literally a couple minutes of it being on the market, I called him. And so I was at a nursery in line to buy plants when all of a sudden I get this email notification from Biz Buy Sell that Anytime Fitness in Blaine had gone for sale. And literally he said he had just clicked the button.
Wow.
And so I called him immediately and said like, hey, I want to buy it. I don't know if I can afford it. Like the money down is going to be basically all the money I have. And so what can you do? He's like, well, if you want to buy it, we'll make it happen. So what essentially he did, and you want to run this by your bank and like make sure this is kosher. But essentially what he did is we got an SBA loan and then he fronted the 10% for me. So I had the money so I could prove to the bank like, hey, I'm going to pay for it using this money. But really what he did to make sure, because I told him like, I can buy this, but like it's going to really get me pretty low on cash. And so he did, he basically, we sold the gym instead of the $500,000 he was asking for at $550,000. And then the extra $50,000 he just gave to me at closing to basically make sure my cash position was okay. And so that was kind of how it worked. An SBA loan is typically 10% down, but they're wanting the buyer to have the cash. So I had it. I could prove that I had it. I could tell you, hey, this is where the money's coming from. But then Anthony made sure that like on day 1 after acquisition, he gave me $50,000, and we bumped up the purchase price up to $550,000.
And then did you pay him over the course of a few years?
No, I paid him back within, I think, like 3 weeks. Because what we did is I got the I didn't have to pay. You mean for the $50,000?
Yeah.
No, he only wanted $500,000 for the gym.
I see.
And so the extra $50,000 was rolled. He got that from the bank, like
I
the
see.
SBA. So he got that money right away. But then he also gave me like $30,000 in a couple weeks by making sure that the first remit, because twice a month they remit at the gym, like 15th and the 1st. So like I bought, I think like the 28th, within a matter of a few days, I had like an extra 20 grand in my pocket. So I was able to like immediately have cash flow. So from day one, the gym has cash flowed, and just because the way the deal structure was, and I gave him more money for the acquisition, like the purchase price went up by 10%, but I got that money immediately back. So there was really no money down for me.
I see.
And the only way to really make that work, in my opinion, is you have the owner that you're buying from that is really on board with you on it.
100%, which is that he believed in you. There was some other people, a couple that believed in you and your brother when you first started your lawn care business. And what did you do for them? And what do you think they believed in about you? And what did they give you?
So we did a landscaping project for a friend for their second house, their vacation home. That really nice in the water. And so we did a lot of work. Like when in hindsight, we probably earned more than $1,000 worth of labor. However, at the end of it, they basically said, hey, we'll give you $1,000 to go buy, but it's got to go towards a mower, a weed whacker, like start a lawn care business essentially. And so that's when we started Andy's Lawn Care that summer. I think we made $3,000 in revenue. But yeah, they gave us like the seed money for the mower, the weed whacker, and the blower. But in hindsight, we probably only made like $6 or $7 an hour because we worked for like a solid week and a half on that project. But we were also kids, so we didn't know what we were doing. I was 11, he was 13.
Incredible. And have you talked to them since? Anything about your business, and have they acknowledged where you've come?
Yeah, like 3 years later, I think we wrote them a letter. And then I think like, I want to say like 8 years later, once I started Augusta and was really clicking all cylinders. I don't know if if I had franchised yet, but like I think we were doing over $1 million. I think I wrote him another letter, just being like, "Hey, you planted the seed, and I appreciate it," and things like that. But not like super close. They actually, I think we still mow that property. If I think the local shop still does that property, so.
Yeah, and we did mow them for a long time and do routine cleanups there. So a few times they had talked to me about unbelievably how far you had come and what you had done with that first little investment. So those are a couple people that have believed in you, but I want to talk a little bit about subsequently the people that you've believed in and a few examples of that, and then a few circumstances that maybe we hired somebody and we believed in them and then that went bad. So, first of all, from hearing the people believed in you, I wanted to tell you the inspiration for that, and that was Connor Hutchinson. Because when I was talking to him, I asked him, because he bought all the 5 locations from you to start his business, and he had just been a GM up to that point. How long had he been a GM? A couple years?
Although he was going to his second year.
Okay, going into his second year.
But
and
he was working on his third location for me.
Yeah, phenomenal. Was he running all 3 as the GM?
I think they had found the GM for the first one, and he was running that one fine, but he was essentially running one and then starting another.
Yeah, and so there was a series of circumstances that put Mike in an awkward position to immediately have to make some changes, and Mike presented it to him, and they made a deal for him to be able to buy it. And I asked him, what was it about you that Mike felt like he could trust you to do something like that? And it just brought everything back to me of how Anthony had believed in you. And you probably don't want to share details of that, but I know you worked a deal the same for him. What was it about him that you believed in him that he could do what you had done?
Well, first off, I want to make it clear that like, I don't want to take anything away from Connor. And so the problem in even talking about this, and this is why I've not addressed this topic at all, is somehow because I'm involved, people will think that somehow it's been handed to him, and that's like nothing. Like there's nothing further from the truth. So
100%.
I would say though, in terms of the track record of the ability to be able to grind is what I'm looking for in someone that I'm putting something on them that I know they have a massive skill deficit in. So like I knew he didn't have the skills to run 5 locations right away. I knew that. Like there was very, very few people that could. There's very, very few people in the world that actually have ran 5 locations, just in general, let alone lawn care companies, let alone Augusta Lawn Care, let alone to do it from 0 to 5 in one day. So like, I knew there was a skill deficit. I knew that would be very, very painful, but I also knew that he had the stick-to-itiveness to be able to make sure it got saw through, and that any risk I incurred, I would be willing to co-sign because of the track record I had with him.
Yeah, so that is where the inspiration began, people. And so I want to talk a little bit about a couple people. And one I want to bring forward first is Austin. And if you could tell us who Austin is and when he worked for us. And can you tell us about the day that he came for his interview and how that all went down? And then a little while after, when we were going to fire him from his one and only chance, and how that all went down.
So Austin at the time, I think we were maybe 5, 6 employees, something like that. And he came and got an interview, and he admitted in his interview with me that he had gotten fired from his last job, and it was from a car wash place locally. And so he was like, I'm like, well, why did you get fired? And he was very honest. He said, well, I had a bad attitude, and a customer came through and we were drying off their thing, and I flipped him off and like swore at him, and he drove away and stuff like that. And so I'm like, okay, well, okay, thank you. And so in my mind, I thought we wouldn't hire him. And then I went to the car wash place and actually talked to some of the employees and like, hey, do you know Austin? And like, did this happen? They acknowledged. So like, it was exactly what he said. He didn't like cover for anything. He didn't. So like, I respect that he was honest. But I was like, you know what? This is too high of a risk. We're not going to hire him. Well, we were driving up to Canada, my mom and I, to pick up a truck. I think it was, I want to say P8. I forget. But we ended up not buying the truck. That's right. I didn't like the truck. So anyways, we were driving up to buy a truck from Canada because back in the day we could do that way easier. And and I was telling her about Austin. She's like, you should give him a chance. I think you should give him a chance. And so I text you. I'm like, hey, let's call him. Let's see if he's willing to try. And then, it was a little bit bumpy at the beginning. Like, we had a couple times where we thought we'd let him go. A lot of it revolving around just distractions or like being on a cell phone. But he was able to take the advice of like Josh and others and stay on the path. And then as time went on, pick up more skills. And then he had the desire to make more money. And I think he got with, at the time, his girlfriend, now his wife, that was also money motivated and like willing to work and hustle, which started to rub off on him, I think. And he had a reason to make money. And so, and then came along another employee in the business that was his friend and had just come out of the military and had a little bit more capital. And Austin was kind of looking for the next thing. And so they decided to move into Texas together and start a location just south of Dallas. And so again, same thing. I think there's been a huge skill deficit for Austin in the past few years, going from an employee right to being an owner. And using the 3F program to not have to pay the fee is nice, but you still have skills you don't have from the past. And so I think he's grown a lot and started to acquire those skills. But anytime that you are put in a place of skill deficit, it is extremely painful to either A, attain the skills, or B, the harsh reality of just how many skills is required that you do not have can be extremely crippling and debilitating. And so the ability for someone to be able to say, yeah, this stinks. There's a huge amount of skills that I need to acquire in order to be able to scale this mountain, and then somehow buckle down and do it over the course of 3 to 5 years is extremely admirable. And so whether it be Austin or Marcus or the like that have used the 3F program, they are going to have a skill deficit. It does take some time to make that switch and that transition. But to Austin, like there's not been a single 3F program member that's failed. And this is in part because they jump into the program and there is a huge skill deficit. Like I thought when we started the 3F program, there'd be a huge amount of attrition because people going from employee to owner, it is their first time ever managing people and being the founder and the CEO of a company. Like so, but to Austin's credit and to all those the 3F program, there's none of them that have ever failed.
Yeah, and he walked into our office this week, blew me away, just a surprise. And he has been in business for 4 years, and he told me things are going really well, better than ever. And it was so awesome to see him. So you mentioned Marcus, who now owns his own location, who was an employee of ours. What were you seeing as potential in him? Somebody who lied on their application, said that they had done lawn care and landscaping before and lied. And after we hired him with zero experience, what was it that you saw change in him? Or just incredible young man, but what was it that you saw in him?
Well, you and Lee were the ones that actually made the decision on Marcus because at the time you were GM and Lee was the estimator. So you guys actually made the call. I left it to you. I remember having the meeting about it and you both kind of decided on Marcus. And if I recall, you all made that decision mostly because of his desire and hunger to like get into the Audible programs, improve his life, make more money, and just like have a voracious appetite for self-improvement. So that's probably, I'm guessing, what you guys saw.
Yeah, 100%. Same thing. And he wouldn't have had the chance before. He moved here when he was 18 or 19, I think. And long story short. So there's another person that you interviewed and you were thinking, no way at first. Tell us a little bit about Nick.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So Nick came in. This is now the Bellingham shop. This is right before I started moving off of operations. And I still remember making his interview. So I did the interview. I was thinking, no, he seemed too much of like a ski bum situation. We live next to a ski resort. So I was like, he's just not going to have the drive or desire to like show up to work and stuff. And so I called his references, and one of his references was a couple. They had worked a bunch on their property doing landscaping and I think some farm work, stuff like that. And so I called him, and like the gentleman gave me like a rave review. Then the wife called me and gave me a rave review.
Wow.
And so this is back in the day when you'd usually have a few days to like get reviews, and then if it was a good person, you'd hire them, which I think we're getting back to that stage next year. But and then I'm like, okay, let's give him a shot. Cause like, these are like rave reviews, like not the traditional reviews, like phenomenal. So yeah, we had him out. And then back then, up until we had about 20 employees, I would take them out for lunch on their first day and do orientation. So I took him to Panda Express over on Sunset. And I remember talking about his girlfriend and all sorts of, he was thinking about living in a van, and he was thinking about going to Alaska, I think it was. So yeah, it was just like, I was like, I don't know if this guy's going to work out or not, but like, he is definitely intense and like very well-spoken even back then. And so, yeah, it was good.
And today he's our regional manager of the franchise. He's part of our leadership team. He runs the coaching program. And long story short, that guy has had an incredible story, which we've interviewed him a couple times, and he's been on Upflip.
He owns his own location too.
And he owns his own location also. So there's somebody else that you might not expect me to say anything about, but this person is on our media team. And he is now the hirer and the manager and all of this kind of thing. And he actually told me once, he said, I will never hire anybody on this team that has a degree, because he's interviewed people and things like that. So he is incredible. And what could you tell us about Zach that you think is so special? What kind of skills did he have before? And what is he to you today?
Yeah, so Zach came on, and we were, at the time, like we were going from just Josh, and I don't mean derogatory. Josh was the first media person. I had no idea what media was. I had told him like a year before that, hey, if you stay on until this time, I'll make you a full-time editor. And honestly, like I did not think we were ready for it. At the time, I think I was making like $2,000 a month. And so I'm going to be paying him like $5,000 a month. So it made no like sense. That was 2020. Well, so June 2020 is when we had scheduled for him to become full-time video editing. And I knew he'd stay on for that. So like had the cart before the horse for like a year. And then COVID happened and everything. And I'm glad we made the arrangement, because he came on full time, like right when everyone was not everyone was locked down still, but like right when media was extremely important. So we started making content then. That's when we had like 2,000 subscribers. And that was 2020. And no, I think we had like maybe 8,000 or 9,000 subscribers. Anyways, that's when he came on full time. So then he was going to move. He went and moved to Indiana, or wherever it was, Kentucky, and got married and everything. And that was great. But then we started trying to hire for the media team. And it was kind of like trying to find who's going to find that groove, like work well with me. And so we went through a few people that were great, but like they just didn't stay long term, or they had other ambitions, et cetera. They didn't like see the vision of what I was trying to do with the media. And so Zach was onboarded, and then he's basically kind of just like taking that side of the department for me. He gets what we're trying to do. He understands like the business aspect. He's a very creative person, very outgoing, and so it's difficult sometimes to find a media person that also understands more of the business side. And like and I know that part hasn't come natural. Like it wasn't a previously obtained skill, but he's learned and watched content. I think his greatest asset is the ability to like just absorb stuff from other content creators, listen to all the content that I have, so he understands. Like it was cool when we went a year ago to North Carolina for our trip. for a month and did like a startup there. And recorded it all. He was putting out a video a day. Well, when we were traveling to Louisville to go see, like halfway through the month-long event, we went to Louisville to go check out the conference center, or the hotel we were going to be at. And for an hour and a half, he's talking to one of his friends that wanted to start a business, and all about lawn care. And he's just like rattling off everything we talk about. So like,
wow,
he was really a sponge for like everything that we talk about in terms of, what's the threshold of what quality content Mike wants out, and he can kind of like be my eyes and ears on everything. So now we have like seven or eight people full time on the media team. It's very expensive. It's a kind of a break even department because like as we have more money, we just spend more money on it. But then they do all the media for like Copilot and Augusta and a lot of other aspects of not just my brand. So he's been flexible to be able to scale up the team, and I think we have a solid team now in part because like there's a full-time manager of them. And so Zach is certainly someone that has been creative, that's also learned the business skills.
So you would say he had a skill deficit at the beginning too, and because you believed in him, gave him a job, and because of his desire to learn and absorb content, he is where he is today.
For sure.
Okay, so there's somebody else, and her name is Lindsay. And you believed in her, and she's done multiple things for you. And tell us how in the world she is now on the Copilot team when there wasn't even such thing as a Copilot when she came along.
Yeah, so Lindsay was in the gym, being a personal trainer / office manager. So then she became the gym manager, and she was working two jobs kind of full time at the gym, but then she was working kind of like as a operations manager for a factory that did chocolate locally. So essentially it came down to, we were starting to get into bug hell at Copilot, and I needed someone in operations because I needed to focus more on the product side. And operations is essentially like hiring, firing, paperwork, HR, one-on-ones, all that fun stuff. And so I went over to the gym, and at the time that Christian was still working there as a trainer, and like that was like peak gym. Like our gym was dialed in because you had Christian, we had Heather Nelson there, we had Christian's wife Sierra there. Like it was just firing all cylinders.
Yes,
it was like our most profitable period of time. Anyways, Lindsay was in the office full time. They all worked really well together, but she was kind of the crossroads. Like she either wanted to go full-time with the gym or full-time with the factory. Like she needed to kind of figure out one. I'm like, hey, like there's this other thing I really need your help with. I trust you a lot, and I know you're a hustler. And so I need a hustler in operations because I need someone that is guarding the bottom line and isn't going to frivolously spend money. And so I don't have to worry about it as much. And so I made her an offer and said, like, let's make this happen. And yeah, so then she came over like literally the next week, I think it was a week or two maybe, came over to Copilot and basically picked up operations there.
Yeah, and she's blown it out of the water. Tell us about Rachel, who's worked in every single part of the business you had up until she left.
Yeah, she got promoted to being mom, so
yes,
she had to leave, which is fine. We forgive her.
Yes.
But it was funny. She left like right when I think things started to really come together for Command Center. Like
which she was a huge part of.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like she's probably seen like the darkest days. That's what I meant.
Yes, yes.
She was. The thing about Rachel I appreciated was like she was always there, even when it was hard. Like there was a lot of people that during Spring Rush we were so behind, and it was like so debilitating, and everyone was so stressed out. Like they just either they called out sick, or they just didn't show up, or they'd leave. Like she was just always willing to work way more time, etc., to make it happen. And but she worked at the gym some. She worked at Augusta in the office in Bellingham. She worked at Command Center. She worked at
Ketosis cups.
There was one other though. I was trying to think there was another one.
Really?
Yeah, she did something else. I forget. I know she would know. But anyways, she worked in every single business I've ever owned. That's why I'm failing to remember what the last one was. But anyways, she worked in all of them, and like she's just very flexible in terms of being able to serve and willing to figure things out. She's an extremely capable person. And then we kind of convinced her to come back for the last few years, and she got the skills required to then go help her husband start his business with his mechanic stuff. So like that's super cool. And so she's crushing it now, and I'm very thankful because like she didn't get a lot of the rewards of what now we're seeing, but she was a hustler. I appreciate that about people, and she's just a real grinder.
Yeah. And what it was about her, all these people, we asked them to come work for us. There's people that we saw the potential in and like went out to get them. And she was one of them. Lindsay was one of them. Tell us quickly a little bit about Christian. People have heard his story before, but why did you believe in him enough to actually create a position for him?
Mercy, we're gonna have a lot of people. As I'm starting to think about this, there's like Brad.
There's a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay, so Christian, he came out of the military. He was the son of Heather Nelson, which was a trainer at Anytime Fitness in Blaine. I had worked with Heather as a coworker. Then I had gone and started Augusta, came back and bought the gym. She was still there. She had been there since day one. I think like almost 10 years of training there. So I think for 6 or 7 years under my ownership, she was there working. And so Christian came back from the military and had married Sierra. And so I hired him, and then I hired Sierra also. No, sorry. I hired Sierra before Christian got back from the military. So I hired Sierra during the middle of COVID.
And they were married?
Yeah, but he hadn't got back. So then he got back from the military. I interviewed him like, oh man, I got to hire him too. So I'm like, we got to have to scale the training up because I can't really have 3 trainers unless we're like really firing on all cylinders here. And so, yeah, he was great. Christian is great. He's a sponge. He's extremely intense and passionate. And those are raw skills that can be honed in over the course of time with just education and training. And so, yeah, so he was growing a bunch inside of the gym, and he needed to make more money for his family because they were having another kid. And so, and he wanted to start a family and things. So to make more money, I'm like, hey, let's do this thing called Built for Business. So we started this thing called Built for Business, and it was basically just, I knew like, hey, I can take what I do for workouts, we can kind of make it more of a one-on-one coaching scenario. We'll split the revenue together and make more money for you, et cetera. So we kind of did that for a while. It was okay. But it was more a matter of like, I don't want to spread my brand too thin by promoting something like that. It's so niche. And it really was just to keep him so he could make more money.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but like I can't like make an ad slot on a video for something so niche.
Yeah.
So basically then I told him, okay, like come on over to Copilot, and we'll put you in sales. And I knew his conviction, he'd be able to figure out the sales side of things, like the blocking and tackling of like a different product. And he had the conviction in what we were doing. And so yeah, he's been there for over a year now, year and a half almost.
Wow.
And yeah, he's just like trying to acquire the skills, and again, seeing a skill deficit is fine as long as you have the ability to be able to then go out and hunt skills. And so he's done that. And it is lethal on Zoom calls, and it's because of his passion and his drive to see the person he's talking to succeed, and the mission of what we're trying to do at Copilot. So he's crushing it.
Yeah. So it seems like with all of these people, they actually had a skill deficit for what you were wanting to move them into, not really qualified to do it. Not very many of them. And so
is this going to all come to you at this point? Is that where you're trying to take this?
No, it was about Hutch, but I did want to bring up the conversation that you and I had this morning, just on the fly. And we were saying, well, we had talked the other day, do you build a position and then slap a label on it? Or do you have the label of the position and then you build the position under it? And then you were saying this morning, well, if you actually took the definition of a CEO, I would not fit that definition, but I just am because I'm at the top of the org, right? And because we had been talking about that you put me in this role and I don't really have the skills for it. And either like you and I have talked, if somebody doesn't fill the role, you should find somebody who does, or give training to that person to come into that role, which is what you've done with all of these other people. But there have been people that you've believed in and actually really thought they were legit. And then we found out they weren't. So can you tell us about Trevor?
I would rather not cash shade on anybody.
Okay. So then I'll just give the overview of the fact that sometimes you believe in somebody because of the way they portrayed themselves and their experience and all that kind of thing. But then they show character that over time that doesn't match that of our vision for Augusta. And you realize that the common denominators of all your strong people, that they were always trying to get better. They weren't wallowing in a victim mentality. They were all seeking to get better, and you saw the potential in them. So he was somebody that we eventually had to part ways with. But if you look at that difference, it was somebody who was experienced but wasn't really willing to go on and get further skills, which was really relationship capital and, respecting where the company was going for. But then there's people that you've never even met and that you've hired for positions. And one person I thought of was Felix. And tell me how you put out this ad for GMs and you started interviewing them all over the country because you needed a GM. And how was it that you brought him on, moved his family? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, like it started off as, I think I was interviewing for a position.
Was it New York?
North Carolina. No, I was interviewing for North Carolina.
Okay.
And then way back, we needed to kick someone out of Augusta. So it came out in New York. And so I was like, okay, this person's leaving. They had some bad family situation. And the business was going to basically get torn apart in divorce court. So I stepped in, I took it over, and then at that time, I then went back like several months and found a GM that had applied and brought him over to it. So at the time, he had to travel a couple hours. So then we ended up moving the location over to Connecticut, closer to where he lived. And so, that was good.
Yeah, and then he ended up moving. You funded that and just really believed in him. He had challenges with his children being sick, and you just really talked to him, I think, several times, him and his wife on Zoom calls. And that always has really impacted me, that you are actually hiring these people, which has now become common with us hiring a lot of people overseas and higher executive positions that we've never physically met, but it was a little bit different then. So I don't want to take too much of your time today, but it looks like that you believe in grooming people from within. And then at a certain point, realizing that with all their trying and all their effort, that sometimes people just don't have the skill and you've had to hire from without. And so when is it that you just come to decisions like that? So say for like Copilot, we had a team, and then at what point do you say, okay, we don't have it internally, we need to go externally and get someone?
Yeah, like if you have the money and you don't have a lot of time, then you go out and hire from without. So go out from outside the organization. People have seen it, done it. They know what good looks like. They have the experience to make sure it happens. And so, in the event of many of the examples you have, we didn't have the capital to go out and hire those positions. So I had to spend time to invest in them or allow for time for skill acquisition. And so the alternative is, if you have more money and you don't have a lot of time, is you got to go out and spend. And so when it came to Copilot, we didn't have a year, 2 years, 3 years to groom up the existing team. And nor did I have the skills to groom them up, because typically you can only groom someone's skills who they have a deficit in which you do not have. Mm-hmm. And so because there were technical skills that I did not have, I could not even help or coach or mentor or foster the current team. Mm-hmm. And so, and it was also very time sensitive, like you're in such a bad spot. So that's when you spend a lot of money in order to save time, and you go out and make it happen. And that's what we've done this past year. We just brought in like a couple more people. It was like really, really good. But it's expensive, but it's a matter of like, we are buying time here. And the alternative is we wait for our current team skills to get to a certain level, or, what I feel is right for the member, and I just go out and like spend what is required to get that experience on the team now.
Yeah, I think it was the Second in Command, a podcast that I heard a couple weeks ago, that you have somebody that's internal and they might be able to double, and then they might be able to triple the business, but they know that they don't have the skills to take it further. So it looks like you have a good idea of that when you should go outward and hire. But there's so many people. There's people like Lee that we saw the potential in. There's someone named Charity that it was a chef, but because of the character that we knew was in her, we asked her to come and help us with the business too. So that's bringing somebody in with zero experience. You mentioned Josh as your media guy. He just liked to take pictures. And so you just took who you had from the field and had him start doing that with you. And another one would be Brad, who is such an incredibly loyal person and came all the way from the field. He's a CPA, and we created a position for him, a whole nother tax division, another company off of, Augusta, the influence of Augusta and everything. And now he runs that. So there's so many people that have benefited from your leadership, but the people that are listening, they are going to ask, what in the world?
Wait a second. Let me just clarify something.
Yeah, I knew you'd need to clarify that for me.
Yeah. So let me be clear in that each of the people that you just mentioned would be successful with or without me.
Okay.
It is simply that you create a vehicle in which they choose to be able to operate in, and they're successful in that. But they would choose another vehicle with or without me and make that area of their life successful. So it's nothing really to do with me. I am able to make more money by them also being in the vehicle and operating as well as they have. And so I'm not Mother Teresa over here handing out opportunity to people. I see an area in the business that needs help, and I believe I make more money if I can take people that are loyal to the cause, that work hard, that are hustlers. And so I just want to make sure I'm not Mother Teresa, nor did I make these people successful. They are successful in and of their own right, and they would be with or without me.
Yeah, so I was going to get to that part because I was going to ask you what it was about you, the character that you have, that you would believe in all these people and give them a chance. Why would you hire people that have such a deficit?
Okay, so that's a different question. So my first, usually because you don't have money. That's actually like the honest truth. Yep. Because you don't have the money and you have time. And so if you have time and you don't have money, you usually hire people that are lower skilled and you try to invest in them. You try to coach them up. You give them leeway. You give them time to learn. You got to give them feedback. And so that's the honest truth on it, realistically. Yeah. And then realize that they're going to make mistakes. And then usually when they make mistakes, and I realize I make mistakes and people have forgiven me, whether it be the owners inside of Augusta or the team when I miscalculate on things. And so I can give that back to them too as they're learning.
Yeah. And what I've seen in you is you have grown exponentially. Like you have Trevor as a coach. You've listened to everything he said. You've digested Alex's material. You've met him. And now with Copilot, you've needed people that are so high level that you've now worked with them. And you have a vision that I was telling you, we talked about a little while ago. You have a vision that's like 5-10 years ahead. And it's hard for average people to stay on board and hear your frustration with them as they try the best that they can. So what would you say to a business owner who's wondering if they should groom people within or pay them more money to bring them in? And you're saying that it just depends on how much money they have. But there's this concept that we hold to, and that is that you should trust somebody till you have a reason not to. And did you trust these people? Was it, it wasn't their skills, but there were things about them that you must have thought they're worth putting this time into.
Yeah, I think each of those people had the intangibles, regardless of whether they had the tangible evidence of success. They had the intangibles of work ethic or determination or ability to stick to things, loyalty, and the ability to figure things out. And so that is a skill in and of itself, and it's hard to quantify that. But if I had to bet on someone, I would usually take that over someone who had the skills. And so the person that has the skills and also has the work ethic will be lethal. And that is usually the person you will have to pay a lot of money to because they have a gazillion job offers,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll go start their own business because they have the skills, they've done it before. This is a matter of now they want to go own their own thing. And so for the person that does not have the skills and they are trying to attain them, if they have intangible work ethic, if they have the ability to stick to things, if they are loyal, if they put their head down and grind, those are things that they will attain the skills in time. It's just a matter of time. And yeah.
I think there's people that really recognize that you've given them those chances and they really blossom under your belief of them. And I know that when Rachel left, she had been with us, I don't even know, like the longest of anybody, long time, worked at all the businesses. And she had written a card for me and it said, "You always say you're not a leader till you produced a leader who's produced a leader." And she said, "Now I know that I'm a leader too." And to see that they can actually see that potential in themselves and how they've changed under your leadership. Austin was saying when he came in the office this past week, he said, "I have this employee that frustrates me so bad." And he said, "I should really let him go." And he said that I thought of all the times that you guys should have let me go and didn't let me go. And he said, "I thought I should probably be merciful." And I've heard that from other guys that have worked for us when one of them, he was standing right beside me one day and his employee was talking to him on the phone and his employee hung up on him. He's like, "I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm going to fire him." And I'm like, "Whoa, remember when you should have been fired?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah. I should, give him another chance." And I'm like, "He's probably tired. He's probably hot." And I was only able to say that. Again, I told him it was the same way. I said there were times I was stressed and I was tired and I was frustrated and I got mad and walked out and Mike should have fired me. And so when I told him that, he's like, "Okay, yeah." Then they see it like, you've been given mercy, you've been given opportunity, and then you watch all these people then send that on down the line, and it's pretty awesome. So thank you from all of us and many more I could mention for giving us all a chance to be what we are today. And I hope we can make you proud and show our appreciation for all that you've done for us. So I know you're a busy man. I'll let you go do your thing. And thanks so much, Mike. And you have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.